Hey guys, I'm Jordan. I help people expand their minds and get in touch with their sense of self-care and self-love. Today we're talking about emotions. Emotions, negative ones, positive ones, they really don't exist. They're just feelings. There's no negative ones or positive ones. They're just feelings. We can't ignore them as much as we can ignore the wind. And it's a lot less about ignoring them and so much more about feeling them, wholeheartedly feeling them at their core and understanding why they're there. Because the fact is, emotions sometimes are attached to traumas and they're attached to experiences that we don't like. I'm going to try not to use the word negative because the fact is, all experiences that we go through are just meant to help us shape us into who we are. So they're not negative or positive, they're just things that we're meant to go through. So as soon as we start looking at it more on that angle and that perspective, then we can gain a much healthier perspective of why we're going through this at all, instead of just trying to numb ourselves and walk away from things and not feel things or ignore things, because that's not healthy. And the body remembers that. I once had somebody ask me, is it possible for the body to store emotions? And I said, yes, 100% yes, it is. It so is. And that shows up in ways like our body, as I mentioned in my other chakra videos, our body is connected to our spiritual self. You have your spiritual self and your physical self. So your chakras are connected to your body in the different body parts and zones that I talked about in all my chakra videos. And the fact is, the different feelings and emotions that are associated with even different body parts or different chakras are very greatly tied to not only our body but our life. And I know when I talked about the sacral chakra, I said that was where emotions lie. But this is about more than just simply the idea of feelings and emotions. It's about understanding that certain traits are still things that you can feel and experience, like communication, for instance. That's not necessarily something you can feel, but if you blocked yourself from feeling communicative, and you just told yourself that you don't like dealing with people and you just want to become a recluse. All right, I'm just gonna ignore people, and I'm just gonna live alone and not talk to anybody. And that can foster and fester into something so much worse. 6 months from now, you could end up becoming an agoraphobic that doesn't want to leave the house, or you could become that could manifest itself into you becoming a worse introvert that's now shy, has problems, literal problems speaking to people because you blocked your ability to talk to people. And at some point in time, 6 months ago, a year from now, you just said to yourself that I don't like people. I don't like talking to people. It bothers me, so you put that aside. Or, for instance, it could be other things. It could be anger. You could be telling yourself that instead of trying to feel it and learn from, why am I feeling anger? What triggers me? What makes me feel this way? And is it attached to traumas? Is it attached to very specific things that if I broke it down, would I be able to analyze that anger? No, but instead, so many of us block it and we put it aside and we ignore it, and we try to come up with little tips of how we can not get angry. But that's not the answer. What we need to do is really integrate with those feelings and really feel them in their entirety and understand why we feel that way so that we can move past it. I mean, yeah, and eventually, when you're moving past it, you won't. Maybe your end goal could be to still have less outbursts of anger. But the point is to reach a point where you're working through it and you're unraveling it, not simply just putting on a mask or finding ways that you can just dissolve it when it happens. The key is really getting to the root of the issue. And this might be a little bit of aspect of some shadow self for some people. There is some shadow work there to really address things that we don't want to address. Heck, that's the antithesis of shadow work. And it's not just something esoteric. Carl Jung talked about the shadow self being the self that we don't like to look at. The self that is on the other side of the coin, from the side that we show the world, that we want to see, that we want to talk to. These are the aspects of ourselves that we have kept away. We locked them away and we didn't want to deal with them. And oftentimes that even boils over into worse problems down the line. So whether it doesn't matter whether it's an emotion or just a specific thing that you're blocking, it's not gonna lead anywhere good, because you're gonna have it resurface. You're gonna have it turn into a pattern. Like perhaps if you had this childhood trauma that you just never very well worked through, that you're blocking of the love. Maybe you didn't receive a lot of love when you were a child, and so that was something that you should have maybe worked through when you were a little bit younger into adulthood, but you didn't, and the whole idea of inner child work really scares you, so you ran away from it. Maybe your therapist told you needed to deal with it, or maybe you had a lot of people tell you that working through that childhood stuff will really help you maybe work towards inner growth in the future, in your adult life. So you didn't. You put it off, and you put it off, and you keep putting it off. And now you're at this point where you just have a really bad pattern in your love life in general, because you don't have a resolved issue that is at your root in your core. And so then it just festers, and that boils over into the rest of your adult life in forms of the love that you give out and are able to receive, because you didn't have proper childhood love when you were younger. So now you have a really hard time with relationships, and you just don't know how to properly give and receive love, or you're attracted to narcissists because you're inadvertently drawn to them, or you let them in because maybe your mother was narcissistic, and since you haven't dealt with that, then you're just finding partners that are still like that because you haven't dealt with it. But the point is, you have this really ugly pattern of a love life that is not full of unique, genuine love, because you're blocking this thing that you should have dealt with a long time ago. Or it could look like so many things. It can look like so many things. Perhaps you just really, really have an anxiety issue, which is so common with so many people nowadays, whether they're energy sensitive or don't know it, or they just have anxiety issues. Actually, that's one that I'm really glad that I came around to touching on, because it just really, really is so such an issue nowadays is this problem that our society has with feeling an issue with anxiety. The problem is it's not a big issue. Everybody has anxiety. And everybody, I understand there's chronic anxiety and there's chronic depression just as much as there's periodic depression that we all go through. But the fact is, I have friends who have chronic anxiety that they have learned how to manage that within themselves to get to a point where they don't no longer use it as a crutch. And that's all it is. You may even have chronic anxiety, but it's still possible to learn how to manage it and to learn how to just understand that it's just something to be felt, not to sit in too long or to get scared of or to ignore it and try to just block past it. Because there are a lot of things that do make us anxious, that the reality is if we just learn from what is possibly triggering me to feel this way, rather than letting it just consume us and let the feeling consume us, because that's the other thing. Sometimes it's not just so much about ignoring and blocking, it's about getting consumed by the feeling so much that you can't control it. And that's the opposite of blocking, is letting it control you. And it's just this, at the root and the core of all of it, we need to understand that all of these feelings, feeling at an extreme level or at a very under extreme level, and ignoring it and trying not to feel it at all or blocking it, all of these aspects is no different than when I talked about imbalances in chakras, whether you have a really weak chakra or a really overbearing chakra, like you just have a really strong out of whack root. Like it's not weak, but you're almost too connected to it. And so you've got a really, really, really bad anger problem. But the point is, we can block things, or we can ignore them, or we can feel them too much wholeheartedly and let them consume us. But what we need to do is balance it out and try to find more of a homeostasis so that we're just simply feeling things and flowing through them and finding out how that makes us feel and finding out what the triggers are and what the lessons are and how that's connected to your past, so that you can just learn from it in the present moment, and then you can just learn from it and have a new, better future. And that way you're not holding on to the past, and you're also not just blocking yourself from the past either, which is also blocking you from a happier future. So I hope that really helped in talking about emotions and feelings and the overabundance and underabundance, or blocking and ignoring. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked it, like it, subscribe. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope everybody has a great Thursday. Thanks. I love you all. Bye.